look, we got a great show. I just want to say to everybody, I'm Dr. Pat. I'm the host of the Dr. Pat Show. Also here with my friend and colleague, Mark Anthony. We have a special edition. Both of us know what it's like to be in the middle of what we call war. Both of us have stood up. We know what we stand for. We don't quite understand the silence. We don't quite understand the rhetoric. And we are deciding to take action. Mark, you've done something incredible. We have a great show. You've an honored guest, and this is real in real time. Because to be honest with you, enough is enough, right, Mark?
Absolutely. And we have, like Dr. Pat said, an extraordinary guest today. In fact, to call this gentleman extraordinary is an understatement. Politician, statesman, film producer, intellectual, and patriot. Sviatoslav Yurash, at 26, is the youngest member of the Ukrainian parliament. He studied international relations at the University of Warsaw in Poland and in India at the University of Calcutta. He's the founder of Euromaidan Press, and he's worked as a producer for BBC and Fox News, where he was like James Bond, because he went undercover as a Polish producer in the Donbass region in eastern Ukraine so that the Russians wouldn't target him as Ukrainian usurper. And so he was able to document and film crimes actually committed by Russian mercenaries and separatists in eastern Ukraine. So,
and we have the same haircut. I don't know.
And you guys got the same haircut.
Almost the same haircut.
So, as if that's not enough, at age like 23, he gets elected to the Ukrainian parliament. He served as the director of the Ukrainian World Congress. And Sviatoslav Yurash is an outspoken advocate for freedom and democracy. And it is my deep honor, sir, to welcome you to the Psychic in the Dock. Thank you for coming. I know this has been a difficult year for you.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This is always a pleasure to speak with people that care about the drama that is rupturing around the world right now, and that story which the world tries to explain. You have been way too kind introducing me, and the reality is I'm just not the Ukrainian who tries to make his way in the world and tell the world about our country and its aspirations, its ideas about the world. And believe me, there are many more who achieved great things in this country and will go on to achieve many other great things. So the point is, I am but one of millions of others who wait for a chance to impress you all with their achievements, their dreams, and their work every single day.
Well, the war has affected everyone in Ukraine, and we in the United States and my friends in Europe and Canada, we're all watching what's happening in horror. And I know that this is very, very personal to you because 3 days ago, Russian shelling hit a Fox News team, and the casualties included a TV cameraman, Pierrezakrevsky. Yes, and a young 24-year-old journalist named Alexandra. Can you tell us, with respect, can you tell us about Alexandra?
I'll start with Pierre, if you allow me. I knew Pierre quite well. We worked with him in 2014, and he come back to Ukraine several times in the time to this ordeal, and Pierre was a good friend through the years, and I'm eagerly waiting to receive an email of his widow and trying to send her all the thoughts and greatest admiration that I had for her most jovial, most livable, most laughable, he was a wonderful human being, Pierre. He always was the person you could turn to for help, support, advice, human connection, and who else had a joke or two or three or five from his adventures everywhere around the world to tell you, no matter what situation that befell you. And Pierre, his loss is extremely painful.
Yes.
But truly speaking, Alexandra is something else. Alexandra and my relation with her for the last decade, we actually celebrated a decade of knowing each other in December of last year. We essentially had we went through everything in that decade, all different titles, all manners of emotions, both good, the bad, deep, simple and joyful. So the point is the romantic, the friendly. She was a person who I always could count on, who always could count on me, and it's difficult to live in a world without her, because again, this decade is not something you can replace. No matter what relation develop, when you meet somebody as a teenager and you go through all these trials and tribulations to become who you become, and all that time you could still rely on the person who you met all these years ago. That's something that is truly impossible to replace and to forget. So yes, Alexandra's loss there is but another reminder of the senselessness and the unbelievable horror of this conflict and this war. The reality is there are thousands of Alexandras all around my country who are dying every day because Mr. Putin is committed to destroying my nation and destroying every single Alexander that lives in my nation in his imperialistic ambition to rule it. And the point is that this story has more of a reason for me to work to prove him wrong, that Alexandra will live on, not just in the realization of her dreams and ambitions, but in the basic point that she always aspired to, that is to try to help Ukraine become that state that she and I and all the Ukrainians, especially born in this generation, dreamed of: free, independent, democratic, sovereign, and successful. So yes, we shall continue on building those dreams into reality.
Yeah, I want to thank you so much, because one of the things you may or may not know is I know you've been on television in mainstream America. This is an audience of what we call the cultural creatives. They amount to the tune of over 600 million people in the United States alone. And we wanted to make sure that your message doesn't go unheard in reaching as many people as we can. And so I can't thank you and honor you enough. War and in my family and what I've seen in my family and Mark's, we know what it's like. We cannot know your experience, because any country that goes unpunished for the atrocities we are seeing, and we are not seeing it all. But the other day, when I saw a woman with her unborn child being taken out of a hospital that was bombed, no country leader should ever go unpunished for that. And I know that we are just only at the tip of the iceberg to represent what you're going through. But I got to tell you, we are all in to support you, to help you, and to interview as many people. And I am trying to get some of the women in your country, but we are committed to helping you get the word out, because we know that if enough of us do this, that if enough of us come forward in support of you and hear your voice, we will get this done.
You know,
and I just wanted Mark and I, so
yeah.
you know that about us.
Exactly. You know, Mr. Yurash, we never thought that in the 21st century, any of us never thought we'd see a major European war again. You know, but this isn't 1939 in Poland. And the difference here is social media. We're seeing everybody like yourself and other people with their phones, with the ability to transmit information worldwide. In 1939, what was happening in Poland, maybe some journalists knew it, but most people around the world, it was very removed. And this is very, very present. for so many people. And that's why we're very thankful that you're here. And, you know, even during times of peace, losing someone that you love is so painful. And like you said, there's thousands and thousands of Alexanders and thousands of men and women in your position. But, you know, and Dr. Pat and I, we work a lot with people who are coping with loss. That's one of the aspects of our show. And it takes time to grieve. People need time. But you're not only in a war, but you're a member of the Ukrainian government. So how are you coping? How are you dealing with this?
Yeah, what are your greatest challenges as you sit here today with us that we could share with the people that are listening so that they can jump in and know how to support you? Where are you today in this moment?
Well, let's not let him disclose where he's at.
No, I mean, where are you emotionally?
Emotionally, where are you? Sorry, Dr. Pat.
The truth is that what helps the most is going on and doing the work that needs to be done to help this country survive this battle and for it to succeed in trying to defeat those troops which have killed Alexandra and that army which is killing my country a single day. The point here is not stopping and grieving, but to go on battling this battle to the victorious end, because that's what she would want. That's what every Ukrainian who sacrificed their lives in the battle for our country's independence would want, for us to win this. And whatever contribution you can make into that victory that will happen, as history would tell you, in the battles between David and Goliath, that is what needs to be done. So the point is to continue on. I've seen horrible things throughout my life, horrendous things, unforgettable things, but I need to continue to make all that sacrifice, all that blood, pain, suffering worth it for all these people who gave their everything they had for the dream of Ukraine that will succeed and impress future generations. Because I remember when I think about my great-grandparents, my great-grandfather went through Stalingrad and he went on to liberate Europe. My great-grandmother survived through Holodomor, genocide by hunger that Stalin conducted. And she went on to a ripe old age of 94. If they survived that, I can survive this. If they gifted us with independent Ukraine, after all the trials and tribulation of the horrible 20th century for Ukraine, because we survived ordeals unimaginable in that century, the First World War, the Second World War, Holocaust, the Holodomor, the collectivization by Stalin, the Russian Civil War, the unimaginable reality of the Soviet repressive state that forbade you from thinking what you were thinking and saying what you were saying and doing what you were doing. Then private property, for God's sakes. The reality is, if they survived that and we got independent state from all those trials and tribulations, then we can survive this.
I think one of the things that all of us are looking at is getting to know you all and getting to know the strengths that you are showing and demonstrating, the courage you have, the perseverance you have that represents your culture, that represents your journey. And that's really for people that are here that are unaware or not familiar. This is really for many of us to really help you in a way that will really help you, because you're right about this. You know, my grandfather lost everything to Mussolini. And I remember seeing a picture of him and my uncles standing on a tower in Vaglia Soto. It was like top of this tower with about 5 guns and taking a stand for freedom. How important is it for all of you to take that stand for freedom today?
The thing about myself, I chose this path way back in 2013 when I left Calcutta, where I was, to come back to my country and partake in the battle of the revolution of 2013-14. So this path for me is understandable and something I was always on. But the point is, all these people around me who never were a part of the struggle, but with Ukraine being invaded on all the sides by the second biggest army in the world, everybody in Ukraine feels that they need to be a part of this. Everybody is waking up to the battle for freedom and for the future. And the point is that that is something that Mr. Putin never counted on. The fact that Ukrainians are, in fact, freedom-loving people that will commit everything to that cause. So the point for us is very simple. Everybody who never felt the need to think about all these matters and wanted to push this all away, finally had a reason to see the light of the meaning in their life that comes from struggle for that basic reality that so many take for granted, but we have to die and fight for every day.
You know, you brought up a very interesting, many interesting and very valid points. David and Goliath. History is filled with accounts of smaller countries defeating larger aggressors. I mean, the Jewish ceremony of Hanukkah is where 3,000 Israelites defeated an army of 60,000 Syrian Greeks. You get, and what's interesting about the Ukrainian people are some of the nicest, most generous and caring people, but they're also some of the toughest people on the planet. And, Mr. Putin needs to read his history. Isn't Poltava in Ukraine?
Poltava is in the center of Ukraine.
Is in the center of Ukraine.
As Ukraine as it comes.
Absolutely. Charles the 12th of Sweden invaded, and he had every intention of destroying the Ukraine and actually capturing Russia, and his army was annihilated in Poltava. And Mr. Putin needs to realize that when you tick off the Ukrainians, you got to fight that you can't even begin to imagine. And it is so inspiring to see everyone, women, men, young, old, saying, this is my country and I'm going to fight for it. You were born during a time when Ukraine was free. And that was something that your grandparents and great-grandparents could only imagine. And it seems to me that this is such a deeply embedded feeling that it is just inspiring everyone. Does that make sense?
It does. That's the point. Like, my generation knows independent Ukraine only. And despite all the problems that we have, despite all the trials of democracy, trials of the democratic process and economic transformation, we enjoy the fact that it is in our hands to take this freedom, to build our country's path and realize that is something that we value most dearly. And it is put to a test now. And what choice do we have but to fight for that liberty, to build that liberty as our opportunity to build the next generation and that future that we crave so badly. And again, it is something that Mr. Putin never expected, but he made the basic mistake of all the despots. He believes on propaganda. He believed that he'll just roll in and everybody's going to welcome him with open arms and hail him as liberator. But instead of that, he saw the Ukrainian people rise to the occasion. And even when you with all the footage you see, even when they didn't have any weapons, people went out on the streets and they demanded for Ukraine to stay, for Ukraine to win, for Ukraine to be there for them as the state they are in and want to be in. And when you see the images of people with bare arms, bare hands, going on the streets of their village to push out a tank, that's something that teaches you about the will of the Ukrainian people.
Absolutely.
I want to make sure everybody knows we are going to share some of the comments that are coming in based on this conversation today. But for those of you out there, we know that you love to call in. Please call in, give many your questions. What are the questions you have? Because what we know about being independent in the media is we don't silence anyone. and we make sure that we bring conversations to the forefront. And this is for freedom, 1-800-930-2819. Just a couple of things you should hear from people that are watching. Jana sends my heart, such an amazing interview. We love you. We love your incredible country.
Yeah.
You know, another comment that just came through is, I pray with all my heart and soul that Putin stops or is stopped, and that you and your country continue your lives with total freedom. And then these keep going on. Billy, thank you for sending the positive energy. Jolita, thank you for sending prayers to Ukraine. See, this is an amazing audience that has been 20 years in the making. And when their hearts show up, we want to share that with you. We want you to take that with you.
You know, I learned the definition of freedom in Russia. And when I was a college student, it was the waning days of the Soviet Union. And I was in this class, and our teacher was this young Russian guy. He was probably about your age. And but we used to call him the product of the state, because he was like Communist Party line right down. And he was lecturing about the difference between Russian or Soviet Constitution and American Constitution. And he kept going on and on about the freedoms. And, you know, and I was a law student, and I was a little bit sarcastic. And I said, well, wait a second. Didn't you say that he said that the highest form of philosophical thought was the teachings of Karl Marx? And I said, really? So what you're telling us is economic theory, boring economic theory, is the highest form of philosophical thought? And he goes, it is not wise to criticize Soviet Union. I said, yeah, but didn't you say that the Soviet Constitution has the same freedoms as the United States Constitution? And Sviatoslav, he came up to me and he leaned over, and I could feel him breathing on me. And he said, American boy, the difference between Soviet Constitution and American Constitution is not freedom of speech, but freedom after you make the speech. Mm. And wow. And that's exactly what you're fighting for right now. And what so many people, maybe 2 months ago, you took freedom of speech for granted. Americans, British, French, Germans, Canadians, Australians, Japanese, we take freedom of speech for granted, but it's the freedom after we make that speech.
Yeah. And, you know, I want to make something really clear, because even as we speak, you know, I am getting a news brief that's coming in minutes ago for the bombings that are going on as we speak. You know, for people that are watching this, we want to make sure that folks know this is live and this is real. And yet here you all are, you know, you're steadfast in your conviction to fight for this. And it is a pure sign of leadership. You know, I don't think we're used to seeing uncensored leadership like you're demonstrating here today, like your president has demonstrated, like so many people have demonstrated by doing these interviews and coming on. And it's created, I think, a level of awareness and support. But as you're doing it, I can't help but think about what's going on in your country. And I want to ask you, what are you most hopeful about? Because I know we're doing this great interview. I know we're having a great conversation. And I know at the same time in the back of your mind is, I've got to get back out there. We've got to do something to win this.
What I'm hopeful for is the unity that has been shown by all sides of political debate, of political convictions, and basically the matter of the fact that our country has been brought together by this trial, as nothing else could have brought it together. I mean, I met one of my political enemies yesterday, just randomly in the street, and he started to attack me on something that I said or done, and we basically end up, the conversation is with his promise to beat me up after the war is done with. And that's the reality of the fact that basically in this conflict, truly all sides come together, truly that understanding that whatever else we disagreed on and were fighting about just yesterday is irrelevant. We need to win this. And for this, everybody is necessary. And let's push all that aside and let's come together to try and have that victory that our nation deserves.
Yeah, there's nothing quite like having something like this awaken a sleeping giant. And, that is what, we're watching. That's what we're looking at, and there's a lesson for all of us to learn from this. But I love what you just shared, because the power of coming together despite our disagreements, right? Despite whatever we've talked about a week ago, a year ago, it creates such a bond that it's almost like you can't go back to the way it was, right? That you have now this new level of unity that is even stronger than before, right? You see what I'm saying?
Exactly, and that's something that when you ask about what do I want to carry on into the future, is that spirit. When hopeful that after this is done, we remember how irrelevant all those disagreements, all those political fights, those talk shows in which we debate ad nauseam points that don't matter for a second now, don't matter at all to us. So the point is that I hope that spirit of unity stays with us and carries with us as we rebuild our nation, rebuild it to the future.
Arnold Schwarzenegger just released a video, and I don't know if you've had the opportunity to see it, where he's releasing it through several channels, and he is telling the Russian people, because he's had a close relationship with many Russians throughout his life. He said what they're being told is not the truth. He explained what is happening in Ukraine and the suffering. And he said that he admired the bravery of the Russian people who are taking to the streets and protesting the war. What do you have to say to the Russians who are taking to the street and protesting this terrible invasion of Ukraine?
They are leaders of the future Russia. They are showing that they are willing to stand up and tell what they think about this, no matter the trials or tribulations they face there. It's not what we face here. It's not the rockets that we get on our heads every single day. It's not the mortar fire, no minefields, no shelling, no shootouts. But it is the reality that they need to try and sacrifice their comfortable life that you get when you just follow whatever is the norm and try to show that your values matter more to you than just that which Russian state wants to try and tell you. And the point is that these people are giving me hope that in the future there is some possibility for some kind of understanding, conversation, or any kind of future at all in the relationship, which she seems completely and utterly destroyed after all of this. Because I listened to my entire life the Echo Moscow radio station, and they were the only truly independent spirit in the Russian media. They were giving it different parts of the Russian discussion a chance to voice their opinions. And these were extremely Putinist people and extreme opponents of him as well. So they were giving different sides a chance to have their voice heard. And through listening to the radio station, I truly understand that it's far more nuanced as far as different thought leaders in Russia are concerned. So I am hopeful that the message gets to people of Russia, but I'm doubtful, because the reality is that Putin is clamping down on every single vestige of free expression in Russia. This radio station, which I loved and listened to for 15 years, has been shut down because they were giving voice to the Ukrainian side of the war. And Russia shutting down Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. They're just shutting every single instrument of free expression and free and open organization. So the point is that that future, that free future that Russians can try and wrestle from Mr. Putin doesn't seem on horizon, because they have been instruments that they could use to try and get that future have been completely utterly destroyed. But again, it's also important to understand how painful it is for us to read Russian polls and to see how many Russians support the war in Ukraine.
Yep.
It is something that makes it, when you speak with the old generation in Poland, for example, old generation in Eastern Europe in general, and you ask about the Germans and what they think about the Germans, you understand that those scars don't fade away easily. No. Same thing will be with our country. No matter how much I try and in spite of losing politically incredibly, speak with those Russians who oppose the war and to say that there are these Russians, this is a scar that will not heal easily.
Yeah. I'm really struck by this because, we think that everybody is like us. We think everybody wants peace. And there are always sides to it. And, having relatives that came from Russia, well, the one thing I got really clear from them was whatever you hear me say, know that that's not the truth. Because the level of fear, when you're operating in such a fear base, it's hard. I have to tell you, one of the things that I so admire about all of you, and certainly from a leadership perspective, it has been a surprise for us. And I don't know that you know this. You can teach leadership courses, you can talk about leaders of country, but to watch you all, people of your parliament, your president, to watch you bring a message out in the middle of battle, there aren't actually even words in the English language to talk with you about how many lives, how many children that are not in your country that are watching, that have now learned a new level of leadership knowledge and integrity. And I'm not sure you're aware of the impact that you and all of the other people of parliament and lawmakers that have come on and done interviews on shows like this. Their words are being heard by future generations that are saying, I want to be like him. I want to be like her. I had no idea. It'll take some time for many of us to keep talking about this. We know you're going to win this because we're getting to know you. We're getting to know your courage, all of you, your perseverance. We're getting to know you're not going to quit. And that is making us stronger. And I don't know if you know that. It's made Mark and I stronger in what we're doing. And that is the impact that probably you don't know you're having on millions of people today.
Thank you. This means a lot, that again, always remembering the fact that it is not just our battle. The world is watching, the world cares, and the world will push onwards in its support. I'm just terrified by the idea how much more blood and death it will take for the world to step in and truly put a stop to this, which the West is capable of. But again, the reality is that we don't know how much more should we lose to convince the world of that.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a short break because we actually have that video we're going to play during break. We're going to give you a moment to catch your breath. Jacob has grabbed the message from the anti-war message from Arnold Schwarzenegger to play, and him talking about his father. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're also taking your questions, your comments on Facebook. And then we also want to make sure you know how you can support this. This is more than a conversation. This is a call for action for all of us sitting here that have the power to take action. Jacob, Benny, let's take a short break. We'll be right back.
This is a very special episode of The Psychic and the Doc. I'm here with my friend, my colleague, Dr. Pat Baccili, and we have an outstanding guest today, Sviatoslav Yurash, the youngest member of the Ukrainian parliament, and he is literally on the front lines of the war in Ukraine. And if people go to Transformation Talk Radio website, or they go to my website, which is afterlifefrequency.com, you will see links to help contribute to the humanitarian relief efforts. There's many organizations like Doctors Without Borders and UNICEF, and that's just the tip of the iceberg to help the over 3 million people who have been displaced. And that 3 million is going to go higher. But I want to get back to our guest. Sviatoslav, what do you want the world to know? What is the message you need to get out?
The West can stop this at any moment. Russia's economy is the size of Italy. Russia's army fails even to compare to, even fail to be even close to anything America can muster. The West has an awesome power that it needs to use, because Ukraine right now is experiencing the moment that should never happen again, and it's happening again. And how many generations will it take for people to ask your generation, why didn't you do more? Why didn't you do something about this horrible travesty Russia is making in Ukraine every single day? Why didn't you save those Ukrainians? Why didn't you do something with that military budget, those instruments that you have harnessed over generations? And again, it only takes understanding that the West can stand up and call Putin's bluff. And that will make Putin finally stop in thinking that he can do anything he wants, not just here, all around the world. In Venezuela, in Syria, Central African Republic, Putin does this and he gets away with it. Maybe there's a point now where he can finally realize that he will not get away with this.
Well said. And for us, we're right there with you, because we're reaching out to our own politicians, the local ones, and we're asking why. Why are we politicizing this? Why aren't we doing more? Let's talk, more action. There are things that can be done. And you're right. You so well said, when you're sitting where most of us are sitting, and you have countries that have the enormous power to, turn the tide, most of us are scratching our head and saying, come on.
Yeah.
Right, Mark?
Yeah. We all have to help with this humanitarian effort. Dr. Pat and I, and certainly Sviatoslav, thank you so much. I mean, we reached out to you, you responded, and because this is important, because, Dr. Pat and I have been talking about the invasion of Ukraine since the day it happened, our first show, and we kept saying we have got to do something. And this is how we can help, is to get the word out. There's nothing political about children getting shot at and dying. There's nothing political about elderly people's homes being bombed. This is just the worst of humanity. And the Ukrainian people are standing firm and tough, and they are not letting this war criminal take their country. Sviatoslav, how could Putin possibly win? I mean, what is the end here? I mean, I don't see what he's going to end up with.
Other than just pure power mongering.
Well, I mean, he's going to end up with a country filled with heavily armed people who hate him. What is the end game here?
Again, his main mistake is believing his own propaganda. He does, and he for decades expressed it, that somewhere deep down, everyone wants this. Everyone wants what he wants. Everybody wants to be a part of that Russia that he's building, that prison camp he built, in which people don't have access to the internet. People cannot truly travel around the world. That country which is despised by so many because it destroyed the life of so many, not just in Ukraine, around the world for these 2 decades of his power regime. So the point is, what Putin believes is that delusion that he exists in. And that's a sad story of a man who basically has unlimited power to make his delusions a reality, but not just for himself, but for all these people to suffer, all these people to die. And we are going to wake him up in that delusion, no matter what he thinks he can do here.
It's an example of ego. In English, ego, ego, and I refer to it as edging God out. And when you look at yourself as center of the universe, and I've observed Russianologists and military analysts, and it's fascinating the way you've said how he believes his own propaganda. There's a belief in military and political communities that he views himself as Vladimir the Great, like some type of Peter the Great Stalinistic figure who's going to build this empire. And it's all, the only thing he's building is his own ego and believing his own delusional propaganda. And that's what the entire world needs to understand, that vesting that much power in one person, this is what it leads to.
You know, this month in the United States, and Mark and I did this the other day, and this is, again, following up with what Mark just said, this is really catching everybody by surprise. We did a show the other day because in the United States and then in the world, they pick one day where they have International Women's Day. And what dawned on Mark and I the other day was we couldn't recall another country in our lifetime, except those countries in Africa where genocide was happening, right?
Right.
We couldn't remember another country that had both powerful men and powerful women. And we're seeing this from you all.
Yes.
You know, you're coming on the media. You know, there are photographs of some of the women with machine guns and just such unity, and a unity of an equal level that the world is really not used to seeing. And I'm not, you know, I mean, when you think about that, it shows the strength and the power of what you just said today. When you talk about unity, you're not leaving anybody out, and it's demonstrated across the board. How is it like to have both women and men in your country stand side by side in this?
It hasn't started now. The reality is when the war began 8 years ago in the east of Ukraine, that's when everyone was needed to try and fill the gap that was in the place of Ukraine's defenses, because we were hoping and relying on these national guarantees we got from the United States, from the United Kingdom, from Russia, of our territorial independence and integrity for giving up the world's third biggest nuclear arsenal. And we did not build the Ukrainian army. And when the need for the army was clear in 2014 onwards, we had to bring everybody who wanted to be a part of this into the fight. So that's when it began, with all the women, all the men who wanted to give everything to defend their country, coming together as never before and showing that to win, you need to bring everyone into the battle. So the point here is the same. In this time of utmost challenge, in the truly great patriotic war that we are living through here right now, everybody's called, everybody's a soldier, and everybody wants to show it in what they live in every day.
Where do you turn for inspiration? You know, in the darkest of times, we always struggle to find the light, and it's always there. But where do you turn for that inspiration?
I turn to history, I always have. No matter how low I fall, I think about all those who have fell lower and got to a point which is much higher than I can ever dream of being. And when I achieve something or get somewhere, I always remember all these people who in my age have done greater things and fell far lower. So for me, history is a great guide always to remember and contrast and compare, no matter what I'm doing, that I can do it better, do more of it. And no matter how much of a challenge I'm facing, remember that there were people who faced much greater odds and won against them. So the point is that you can never give up when you think about all those men and women in history who have done it, no matter what they were faced with.
That's very, very insightful, because we look at historical figures as being on these pedestals. And what you've just proven is historical figures are people just like you that didn't want to be in a war, that didn't want to be in this situation, but saw that they had two options. One is to roll over, and the other is to rise to the occasion. So that is extremely inspirational. If you have a message for the children of the world, what is that message?
Don't miss the great adventure of the youth. That great adventure comes when you least expect it, but you can become a part of it. And no matter whether it's in your country or somewhere around the world, don't miss that chance to seize upon the opportunities that life gives to you. And in this day and age, you can always find the opportunity just by reading, just by finding and seeing all around the world from your computer. Don't miss that chance. Don't waste those years on banalities where you can try and become something great, something that shall not be forgotten. Dare and risk, and you shall be rewarded, as all those men and women in history that have done it, done with their years, and you done with their years what their destiny gave to them. So don't miss those years. Jump on opportunities that are all around the world for you.
Thank you. And I want to get back to Alexandra. I know that she was more than special to you, and that she was an inspiration. What do you think Alexandra would have to say to the world today?
Well, it's not something that is easy to consider, truly speaking, but I think she has said plenty. And when you read her social media, which indicative what she desired, she writes that she is a voice of an independent Ukraine. That's the reality. She is that voice. That with her life, in which she started musical festivals, she wrote poetry. She had scores and scores of different friends from everywhere, which she was living a full life with great many people all around her, and dreaming of better things, greater things. She wanted those dreams to be realized. That should be the task for not just myself, but all these people who have been touched by Alexandra in her life and who have loved Alexandra for this or that reason, to build and realize the dreams that she told us all about.
Kathy Carlson wanted me to give this message to you, if I could. And she is telling us, she says, related to Gustav Mannheim and the ministers of Finland. This is a message from Finland. I hail you as a true Ukrainian leader and look to Ukraine to help fix the tyranny in the world and help extinguish tyranny in this world. This is how important these conversations are. We are touching the hearts of people. And if enough of us get behind us, we will truly have your wish and desire for the West to step up and fix this. Because it can, it's within our realm to do, isn't it?
It certainly is. And I thank all of your viewers and listeners for sharing their thoughts, their sympathies, their prayers, their good words. And it means the world to us, that the world cares. The world looks and finds all these lessons, why they need to cherish and value the freedoms they have, prosperity they have, the ease of life that they have. When we live now in a city where money means nothing because you cannot buy anything, where you have to carry your gun around, or because you never know what's going to happen. Because in the first week in Kiev, you had shootouts, unexpected shootouts in center of the city. When from where I sit, about 100 meters away from me, that's where saboteurs were caught the reality that you don't know, you don't understand how dear and how important and how uneasy that freedom which you are now enjoying is to keep. So it is the world that people are finally seeing that coming to wake up to that which they have right now and are not truly utilizing to that potential they can have in this world of ours.
I can't thank you enough for joining us today. The hour went so quickly. I hope you will come back, both for Mark and I. I just have one last question. I would love to know your personal message for the world. I would love to know what you'd like to leave all of us with. And please know we are with you, step and stride.
I said so much already. It's truly hard to focus on one simple message. The message is simple. You are seeing a country who's fighting for its freedom against countries who take our freedom away. Join in that battle in any way you can. Those prayers, those words, those shares, those likes, those follows, those humanitarian aid that you're organizing, those who come here to join us in that fight, all of that matters. All of that will help the world to become more just, more secure, and freer. So help us win this great battle of our century and show the world that freedom matters.
Wow. Mark, thank you so much.
Freedom matters. And, Gandhi once said that there have always been tyrants and murderers, but in the end, they always fall. And the way of love wins out. He said, think about that. In the end, they always fall. And let me tell you something, this tyrant's going to fall because of the courage, the dedication, the love, and the strength of the people of Ukraine. Thank you so very much for being our guest today. And to all the people of Ukraine, we support you, we love you, and I'm asking everybody around the world, visit Transformation Talk Radio's website, my website, afterlifefrequency.com, and you'll find links to the organizations to help the people of Ukraine in their humanitarian crisis. This is the time. We are all brothers and sisters, and it's time to help our brothers and sisters. Thank you again, sir, for gracing us with your presence.
Yep. And I want to thank the most amazing audience on the planet. You've been supporting us for 20 years in doing this, and you are the best. I know what you will do. You will take this, you will share it, and you will take action. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you very much for attention and for caring. Thank you very much. Let's continue this. All the best.
Thank you so much, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning into The Psychic and the Doc with Mark Anthony and me, Dr. Pat Baccili, right here on TransformationTalkRadio.com. Hey, look, come back next week so we can explore with you more of life's many challenges and learn from fascinating guests. And you know what? Even Mark and me. We'll connect you and discover insights from people in this life and from the afterlife. Extraordinary problems? Yeah, they do. They require extraordinary solutions. But step into the world of possibilities with us on The Psychic and the Doc. That's every Thursday, 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern time, right here on Transformation Talk.